Yes, I did provide an update on oil change, so the only remaining item is push rods for ailerons. Is it correct?
Is that an AD or a service ball?
They are just stiff, so it's not.
Does it need just the ends?
I don't know. Lon may be able to provide more details.
Because most of the time you just change out the ends of them
Mhm.
and readjust them to what you need.
Right. He says that we will do push rods at 100 hour. Okay. For those pilots who have G1000 endorsement, which you need for our aircraft, watch your expiration date on G1000 proficiency or eligibility. And there was a refresher course pushed to the Axis. Please go ahead and complete one if you are overdue or due for an for refresher. If you have trouble finding it, let me know, I'll help you. Next item, air show. Air show is being, the preparation for it is going well. We have weekly calls for everyone involved, and so far we have good coverage from cadets and members. Still not too late to sign up. Email Lieutenant Gillette. He will set you up at one of the stations. Any questions, comments?
Do we know yet if there's going to be any participation with the Planes of Fame air show? That just got announced a day or two ago.
I haven't looked at who is actually flying from air show point of view, at least not yet. Had kind of busy couple of weeks. Yeah, but if you have any news to share which makes it more exciting, post it on our channel, email to the squadron and whatnot.
I just saw their Facebook post from Planes of Fame with Gino that they're back for
Yeah, on Plains of Fame, they are opening up another location at Santa Maria Airport, which will be larger, significantly larger than Chino location. Apparently, they couldn't negotiate good terms with China to expand, and Santa Maria offered them good options. So they will move part of their exhibit permanently there, and they will have some aircraft moved back and forth from time to time. EA Green Dot podcast has a lot of interesting information, so I highly recommend if you have time to listen for something aviation related. They have great topics every week.
I don't recall Civil Air Patrol participating in the Chino Air Show. I think maybe they had a cadet tent, but as far as the aircraft, it's never been there, I don't think.
And we don't know when air show will be restarted at China. I haven't seen any dates posted. They've been talking about this year, then they told they did post for May 5th and 6th. No?
6th. I'll double check.
Okay. Too bad I will be away. But if the air show is indeed happening, I suggest, Chris, if you don't mind, take a lead and engage with show organizers and suggest that we bring an aircraft for display. It's a short flight, and someone will be able to do it, and easy to attend from our members' perspective.
Saturday, May 6th and Sunday, May 7th.
So myself and Terry will be at IPL mission, so we are out of the question. But maybe we'll find someone else from Group 3 to do that, to fly the aircraft there.
What's that date?
Well, 743 Charlie Papa will be at IPL, so we'll have to find some other aircraft.
What's that date?
6 and 7, right?
Yeah, May 6th, May 7th.
Yeah, first weekend of May, right?
Wings of Flame?
Planes of Fame.
Planes of Flame. And that's at Chino?
Right. Okay, made a record to take an action on it. Another great opportunity to participate in CEP event is encampment, which will take place, I believe, in July. Let me see if I have an email on that. Right, so it's primarily targeting cadets, and it will take place from July 22nd through July 30th. Senior members can contribute dramatically, helping cadets to develop on their path in CEP missions. There is a range of options how you can contribute, and if you can dedicate the whole week, spend it on grounds with cadets, I would recommend it. I wish I could go myself, but unfortunately it overlaps with my travel plans. So this year I'm out. If you need help finding the email, how to engage with encampment, please again reach out to me. But if you check your CEP email, it's sent wing-wide to the whole organization in California by Major Albert. So look for that. Any questions on encampment? Let's see what one is saying. Okay. Right, yeah, so if you are using Teams on mobile device, it may have issues when you run Teams in a browser. Install the client and sign in with your CEP email. Basically, same credentials you use to access most of our resources, including Teams, including email and SharePoint, etc. All right. It's a time to, if you wish to recognize someone at CEP within our organization, at the group level, at the wing level, it's time to submit your nominations. So you can send your nomination to myself. I will present it to our awards committee, and we will pass it along the ranks. We will submit it to the group. Group will take it to the wing, and so on and so forth. So I certainly have some people in mind in our squadron, and some people at the group level. I'll be more than happy to take additional nominees for my consideration and for the next action.
Before you leave that topic, I'll add to it a couple things. I'm the group personnel officer, and they're trying to get me to be the chairman for it. I don't know if I'm going to do that, but primarily I'm speaking up because what's important is you don't have to shunt everything through Andre and create his workload. Anybody in CAP can submit somebody for an award. It's a little bit easier if you go through us because we know the process and whatnot, but that is, if you want to go with how we're paid, we're paid in the rewards and the awards nominations. So I highly, I kind of want everybody to go just peruse the awards manual. It's not long, and it lists all the awards that you can nominate people for. The advice I'll give you is if you see somebody in CAP doing something good, either in the squadron, at an event, cadets, seniors, doesn't matter, kind of write that down somewhere, because we can give awards at a group level, even at a unit level, and then they go up to the wing level and the region level. What I can tell you is the unit and group, heck of a lot easier, and we should definitely get people nominated. It's always embarrassing when we don't have somebody to fill a slot. So if you see somebody doing something good, just kind of write it down, make a mental note. If you don't feel comfortable writing a awards recommendation, which they're not difficult, there's templates for the text. You can run up to me or to Andre. And then what happens at that point is it gets submitted, and like I said, anybody can do it at any time to submit into the award system on e-services. It comes up to the awards committee, where currently it's Colonel Sears, myself, Jim Hottoys, and I don't know if the other guy's still doing it. The other guy, Chino, I can't remember if he's still doing it, but there's a committee, just like everything in CAP is a committee, and we literally vote. And one of the things that we determine is it an appropriate award? Because sometimes people will submit people for, this guy was so awesome, they should be in the wing level reward. We're not. We'll look at that and go, I don't think that's the case. We will do either a unit or a group award, because that's all under Major Benner, and he can approve that himself. So that's just all I wanted to say is make sure that you don't have to go through Andre, but it helps if you're especially if you see somebody doing something exceptionally good that you think they deserve something more than a unit reward, then kind of bring it up through us and we can help. But if you see somebody doing something good, just recommend them for a reward that at the unit or the group level. And so that but make sure you read the I was looking up the manual code. I can't see it in here, but just look in the index for forms and manuals, regulations. So it's going to be a capper.
Yeah, it's
30
under
something.
it's on main site under indexes, regulations, and manuals.
Yeah.
And if you just search awards, so operations rating, awards and badges, and there is a process for nomination.
39.9. So
Yeah.
capper 39.9. Just peruse through it, and you can definitely get a feel for the power you have to reward anyone in CAP. So that's all.
39.3 actually.
I just wanted to get that in there because technically I'm on that committee. So
Good one. All right. Let's take a little moment and talk about attendance and membership. And this is also an address to those members attending online. So from time to time, it's okay if life gets in the way and we cannot make it, to stay home and join via Teams or YouTube. Teams preferred because it's it's interactive. You can actually speak and turn your camera on and be present more in a more pronounced way. Plus, we are here to really interact with each other, and it's really important for us to show the attendance and unity in our organization. So I will take time and call all the members who are not attending, and will deliver them this short speech. Hopefully with better weather and more flying opportunities, we can re-engage at a much more high quality level. Any thoughts, suggestions?
Let me interject something. New members that come in here, they only see 5 people. They kind of wonder what's going on with the squadron. If I had 15 or 10 or 12 in here, the impression is different and they want to come back. And that's what we have to think about for those people who don't want to show up here. So we get a member that comes in and is still visiting. My viewpoint is that we should show respect to them, that we are a squadron and very active by having members here. It's my own personal opinion.
I completely agree. Speaking of active members, so we have seen, and we can pull the report on attendance. In our best case, we may have a little bit over 10 people in a meeting, and that's probably about a record attendance, I would say. Overall, based on my data, simply members who paid their dues for this year, we had 24 members. And on e-services, we show 31 members. Why there is a difference? Because number of members who didn't pay their dues, in my mind, I pushed them to patron status. The headquarters didn't switch them to the patron status for whatever reason. Maybe they have shortages as well. But in reality, 24 members are more or less active. And we see some rotation, some people come, some people don't, here and there. That certainly has an impact on candidates who come for a meeting. They come once, twice, they see that attendance is irregular and there is not enough engagement. So I think overall we have good new members board, and I see a lot more engagement. Thank you, Chris, Michelle. Thank you, Chris Younger as well. So this group is pretty much here all the time, and it's not enough. Get the word out there, bring people in. You know a lot of people in your circle, aviation related, fond of aviation, even they are not a pilot, they still can join, and we can rebuild this unit. We are struggling financially because of lack of membership. We barely broke 50% of our budget on membership dues, and we got lucky that Terry will pay the rest, but that's because Terry is Terry and he wants to keep these facilities. He wants to, because I agree with him, having this facility sends a message that we are serious about our mission. We can downsize, we can get rid of it and have roaming place to meet. That's not going to improve our chances to increase membership participation. And that's how I take it. Any other thoughts, ideas, comments? Yeah, so that leads me to another aspect I wanted to talk about, is really being active in these meetings. I'm standing here myself, do most of the talking. Lucky I am, I have Chris and Michelle and Bob to help me, and Chris Younger, but that's not enough. That basically makes 5 of us being active in the unit. It shouldn't be this way. After all, we come here with some purpose. And search inside yourself and see what your personal purpose is. Why do you come here? Why did you join Civil Air Patrol? What do you want to accomplish? And that will help you find the reason and topic to talk. And all it takes is just starting talking. It was very hard for me to start talking about topics I had barely had some idea about, but you just open a resource, you read about it, and then you can talk. Then you start participating in some events, and you have more reason to talk and more issues to cover. It's a challenging time with COVID and stuff, but let's wake up and let's rebuild together.
What you're speaking of here, though, Skipper, and that is, we had a safety down day. We had 2 days in which we were supposed to be part of the organization and the team. And we got very few people. They're not even supposed to participate, and yet they're still participating. So where did they get the safety down day information to continue? They don't want to come to the meetings. They aren't on YouTube, the website to watch us. They shouldn't be participating. And that's in the rule book, and I'm sorry, and I just look at our squadron, and I look at some of the other squadrons on the percentages of their safety meetings each month, and we're pretty shy. We are pretty shy.
Yeah, I agree. And to a certain point, we had a problem with access to the aircraft. That's not an issue. I would say most of the year, rolling back to April last year, we have had an aircraft. We have had significant number of new members joining, and nobody goes through onboarding. That's really to me it's kind of shocking because, like my perspective, I'm here to fly. First of all, fly with a purpose. That's why I joined, because I flew for a couple of years just here and there on rental aircraft, and it was boring after a while, and I didn't learn much, and I was limited what I could do. Um, so that's what led me to Civil Air Patrol. And I had a barrier of COVID. I couldn't do anything here, but I did find a way to fly elsewhere. Even during lockdown, I didn't stop me flying. It was actually the best time. Nobody was flying, no air traffic. Actually, it was fun fact. When the lockdown happened, pilots went and did takeoff and landings at LAX because there was no air traffic there. You did?
I got invited by Ontario ATC to do touch and goes on their runway when I was doing my long cross country during the initial lockdown. They were bored, and I said I would love to, but I can't. I'm not authorized to land there.
So
Search inside yourself why you are here, and engage other members of our squadron. I don't think it's fair to them, to those who are not regularly attending, that only I try to re-engage them, right? So show some camaraderie and call your fellow members up, email them, call them. You can find their information. I can share the contact information. It's not a secret inside our unit. See what kind of engagement they are looking for. That said, any other suggestions or comments? You don't have to. I'm just looking at you because
He's the closest.
I'm the closest guy. Yeah. Well, I mean, I could say, I joined Civil Air Patrol a long time ago in a cadet squadron. So, my first experience with CAP was very different than a senior squadron. When I rejoined this time, I knew what I was in for. Like I didn't. Yes, I want to fly, but I'm so new that for me, flying is going to be, it's going to be something that comes up, later. I mean, yes, I can get checked out on the plane, but I can't really do missions for a while. So I focused on more of, the inner workings of CAP. And I know that's not fun for everybody, but, one of the things that we do stress, and, I've tried to help, in my capacity here is, if you get people through you guys are the newest ones here, Chris and Michelle, the onboarding program, not the flight onboarding program, but the CAP onboarding program, and it shows you all the other aspects of CAP, right? And it's not like, ooh, it's all super exciting, but it does tell you, there's a lot of things to do in CAP. And I think one of the things, and I know you and I have talked about it a couple times, is when...
Roger.
Poor Roger. A lot of times you come in, a lot of people will come into a senior squadron expecting that we're just a flying club, right? And I think that's the misnomer, and I think something as you're looking for people and as you're recruiting, one of the things that I downplay it a little bit when I talk about, oh yes, you're gonna, you want to fly, and I understand that part, but there's a lot of things in CAP before you get to, fly $1 million Cessnas. And I make it pretty clear, and it kind of sets that tone, and I think it helps out, or it should help out with getting people that truly want to volunteer, interact with cadets, or interact with us, and, contribute to the squadron, as opposed to just, hey, I want to show up and fly planes and go home. So, and I'm as frustrated as everybody else, because, I think as soon as back when, both of us were deputy commanders, it's like, how do we get people involved? And it's difficult because there's only so many things we can do, but, I make the commitment as, one of your people that are here often and contributing, if you come up with good ideas and you think you're not getting traction, bring it to one of us. Like we'll figure it out, because
we know the avenues to go, and we know who to ask and get permission, and is it hitting the cafe? Is it wheeling the plane out and just having people talk to us about it? That's actually how I ended up in the squadron. Is I think they were prepping the plane for something, and this was back when Stokes was still here, and I ended up talking to him because I was a student next door, and I said, yeah, I should probably rejoin, but again, I know the volunteer aspect of CAP, and I think a lot of people overlook that in the search to getting to be a pilot. So, a refined pitch. By the way, CAP has a lot of online materials about recruiting people for CAP. I don't think a lot of people know about it, and we do have awards for recruiting people to CAP. So it doesn't have to be just seniors, it doesn't have to be just cadets, but if you are at all interested in kind of bolstering this squadron or bolstering any squadron, but hopefully the squadron, there's a lot of online content in access and on our website on how do you engage the community to participate in CAP. So, and I know a lot of people here know this. I mean, hopefully this is being recorded and people will watch it later. But that's kind of how I see it, and I talk about it a lot. I talk about it in my personal life, and people are interested. I'll be walking around in public, wearing my uniform for whatever reason, and people ask questions, and those are always good times to kind of engage with what CAP is and what we do, and people do get interested. Obviously, parents of cadets is another thing that a lot of parents may not want to be in the squadron with their cadets. They may want to be in our squadron. So just think about it and try to engage people as it is, and let's try to drum up some support, because I've seen, in fact, one of these days I'll display it. When I was rebuilding the squadron's website, there was an archive in the old website of a bunch of photos. There is a picture of this room filled to standing room only. So that is, the legacy of the squadron, that we didn't have enough people, or we had too many people, not enough seats for this room. So can we get back there? Who knows? But I mean, if we at least try and get that kind of engagement and get people interested in what we do and how we do it, and we can get back to, I think I'd like to see at least 50 people, and if
we need at least 50 to
I know
to really meet our financial goals, but I think we will never meet our financial goals if we are not engaged. If we stay, we can have 50 people listed on our roster, but only 10 show up to the meetings.
Yep.
We don't need cash cows, we need members.
Why the term senior? Because in some ways that can actually push someone away. And you have to basically constantly explain the terminology of senior to someone who is maybe past 18 years old that may want to join, but then they hear the term senior and they think, oh, it's not.
Well, that's a semantic issue, and it's because the CAP membership program is divided into 3 parts, right? There's cadets, seniors, and patrons. So, I mean, you could say adults. I don't know. I mean, and they'll just we'll get around saying, hey, well, your first rank is senior member, but I think that's where it came from. I don't know the full history on it, but I make it pretty clear that there's a cadet program, and I usually find that more people are interested in the cadet program, even if as an adult, because we're helping kids, and we're helping kids be dynamic Americans, the saying, and that tends to, and I kind of watch how they engage on that. If they're kind of like, not interested, they're probably not going to be the greatest CAP members, just because they're like, I don't want to deal with cadets. Now, I tended to be that way for a while too, so I don't fully discount it. But when you engage people about CAP, I talk about all our different types of missions, and one of them does have to do with cadets. A lot of it has to do with flying, and I try to tell people we're not doing search and rescue that much anymore, even though we train for it. We're doing a lot of other tasking for other government agencies. And if you want to build some flight hours and you want to get, you actually want to contribute, and you're a pilot or you want to be a pilot, that's one way to contribute, but there's a pathway to get there. It's not just right off the gate, So that's one thing I would say. And it's, I mean, and here's the other thing I've noticed. I think initially, this was like last year, I guess, when I started. We tend to want to get people that do have a lot of flight experience, but we found, we keep, you get CFIs, and CFIs don't have time, because CFIs they're leveling up, right? They're trying to get their 1,500 hours, and they're going to go regional, so they don't have a lot of time, and it would be great to have a squadron full of CFIs that could do other things, but I don't know. So far, our success rate on CFIs is
0.
yeah. I mean, they'll join, and then they, pay dues for a year, and then they never show up. So
Well, at least the young ones don't show up, right? So
yeah. So and so that's why you get that whole thing of oh, it's a bunch of old people flying, and it's like, well, I mean, who has time to do that? And that's where it comes into. So, but I think if you get more people, I mean, a lot of us are of, we're not old, but we're of flying, and we're out doing it. That's the thing. We just have to keep kind of engaging and doing it, and then people will see that it's not just a flying club for a bunch of old guys. And it's like, because that is what I hear the first time I hear about when people see my uniform or whatever, and they go, you look too young to be in there, and I'm like, no, no, I'm not, and here's why. And I've had to master that pitch on, it's not just a flying club. And a lot of times it's just looking at the approach, and I don't know how much you really want to engage on that, but I think recruitment, as far as us, when we accept that commander or senior leader title, it's like, yes, I feel the need to talk about it quite a bit, but you'll find that the more you learn about CAP, the more that pitch just gets pretty natural, and people will kind of talk about it. But yeah.
yeah, and if you need ideas how to talk to people about joining us, you're welcome to give me a call. My phone number is in my signature. I posted it on the board for a while. If you don't have my phone number yet, that's already trouble.
I don't call because you haven't had any parties.
Yeah.
Well, let's maybe do some outside events. Let's pick a park and call for potluck, barbecue, bring your family, friends, and whatnot. I think that will break ice easily. We can share some stories from our life, not necessarily related to aviation, and we will talk to people about what they can do at CAP, which is not aviation related. For example, have you heard of FEMA geospatial program for damage assessment? Probably not. Like, it all comes through your email at CAP, right? If you don't read your email, you are missing out on all these opportunities. And this program is great. I mean, you don't even leave your room to help in damage assessment, like these tornadoes in Arkansas. People sitting at home who went through formal training, actually reviewing what was the damage and marking the properties at what level they've been suffering the damage. It's mind-blowing. I mean, yes, we don't fly so many emergency services missions these days, but there are so many other ways. Aerial photography, if you know a thing or two about photography, that's a track for you naturally, because you would get to see it on the right seat or in the back and take pictures of damage resulted from floods, from whatnot, from snowfall. I mean, there is a lot of way to contribute. And I personally learned to like being engaged with cadets. I've been, I don't know how many cadet rides by now, but a lot. I'm probably one of the leading pilots in our wing flying cadets. And all it takes is just get started. First flight, I had no idea how I'm gonna get it done. I literally I was like afraid of them. What if they ask me a question? I don't remember the answer, but it didn't happen, right? And then I started to think, okay, how I make it more interesting for them. So I started preparing the material. So I went through the syllabus, 6, 7, etc., and I picked YouTube videos, funny interesting, engaging, short, about specific topic which is part of the syllabus. And I compose this email and I send it out. Very few respond, right? But it's all about trying to seed the ground and see what grows. And then they come for the all right, and I ask them, hey guys, have you watched the videos I shared? And I start asking questions, and I see who watched, even they didn't say yes, and who didn't. And I can tell, okay, this may be a pilot in the future, and this may be not. And he's just here for a ride, right? So, airspace education, another great topic. Thank you, Chris, for bringing the CAP for Educators program last time. I want to share my experience. I mean, it's hard to make that first contact, cold call. I'm not a sales guy. I don't pretend to be. You send the message sometimes in the blind, and you hope you get a response, but in most cases you don't, because people consider it as spam. Maybe their system discriminated your email and whatnot. Then you call them. 2 schools responded. I'm going to present at Chino Hills High, and after that I'm pretty sure I can go through the district. But it takes that first step. And most likely we will have some potential members interested in joining our squadron, or maybe composite squadron, Chino or Upland or whatnot. I can tell you, apart from Albert and Eric, all new members who came, my recruits. Okay, and I can tell you that at least 3 other members joined other squadrons based on my lead. If every single one brings at least 2, will be great. But it takes an effort. And it's not that hard. Just get out there. Break that ice created during the COVID in our minds, in our hearts and whatnot. Bring your best out yourself.
Christopher brought up mentioned when he was going over the things like the various ideas, and I mentioned a couple weeks ago about the cafe and having a presence over there. Just wondering if we made it for.
Yeah, unfortunately that event fell apart due to the weather. All rides were cancelled, but more rides are coming. So I mentioned I will be flying cadets this Friday and Sunday. There will be aircraft coming to the cafeteria and out, flying I'm starting at 11 on Friday and ending at 5. You don't have to be there all the time. If you spend a couple of hours with the tabletop and some promotional materials dressed in uniform, people will ask questions. One may be joining, maybe nobody is joining, but you put us in a focus of public. There is a lot of people going to the cafe. It's always full.
And also, like I said, if we focus on the last Saturday, I think, of the month, that's the display day here. So, I came to the display day, I think, last month, and, there are more people in the cafe. I mean, it took almost an hour to get into to get seated. There are people there specifically. Like, I thought the display day thing was just kind of a tax exemption thing for us owners. People follow these things around to see general aviation aircraft. I was shocked. I mean, I've got the little sign for my plane, all that kind of stuff. You show up, you park your plane, and people are immediately like, what you got there? And, start asking you questions. So, I can imagine just putting our table during a display day, and maybe we want our plane over. I don't know. I mean,
that's a great thing.
But I think it's, I want to say it's what's that? Yeah.
So there's a list.
And I've got it somewhere. So if you're an aircraft owner, normally you have to pay. California charges a property tax, or to have because you own an airplane, you obviously have extra money. So that's how it goes. But somehow, some way, someone got into the system of if your plane fits certain requirements, which generally means it's old enough, which almost every general aviation aircraft is old enough. And there's other conditions too, but that's the primary one. certain airports have what they call a display day. And if you go to at least, well, there's two steps. First, you have to register with the county registrar saying, I have a plane, I'm intending to do this particular display day exemption. That's step one. Step two is show up at least 12 per year. Now, the cool thing is, most of us, our airports have them at least once a month. So that's almost an automatic 12. So like I'm at Corona. Corona has, it's the second Saturday of every month. I don't even have to move my plane out of the hangar. I just hang a sign outside my hangar saying, hi, I have a plane and come see it. Nobody will come. They sign your form and there's your display day. So that's the basics of what display day actually is. What it's supposed to be is everybody brings their planes together. Like you go somewhere else and you park with every other aircraft, and you will see families. I mean, with kids and little kids, and it kind of awoken that whole override kind of thing with me, because at first I'm like, yeah, I don't know, flying kids in the plane, I don't know, that sounds like a bad idea. But then you see small kids looking at airplanes, looking at you as you just hopped out of an airplane, and they're like, and they start asking questions, and you're like, yeah, go sit in the cockpit, like, you know, yeah, I mean, you know, however you feel safe about your aircraft, but they want to sit on the wing, they want to take pictures, they want to ask you questions, and that, I think if we can incorporate that here into Riverside's display day, because it is a day that we have here once a month, at least hit that, because I think that's like, it's specifically geared to having extra people here, people who think they can't get into be a pilot, because I see a lot of these families, they're just like, I could never do that. And it's like, well, you could join an organization and get to be in planes a lot, or a lot more than you would, and maybe you will be a pilot someday, or you'll just support pilots. I don't know, but something drew you here to watch planes. CAP has a bunch of planes. Let's make this happen. I think that could be a really good start to events, and then from there, you know, I think there's local airports and their display days, because one thing like Fullerton, I go to the Fullerton one quite a bit actually because it's an easy flight. They have the squadron that's at Fullerton. They run ground ops, so when you land, you actually get from tower. I'm like, I'm headed to transient parking for the display day. They're like, oh yeah, contact Civil Air Patrol at this frequency, and you will have somebody doing ground ops, guiding the plane in, and telling you where to park, and it's Civil Air Patrol. So, you know, we don't have cadets, but they have, usually it's like Captain Balderson is usually hanging out at Fullerton, and he's got, you know, a few cadets and maybe a couple adults, and they're helping out with the display day, just kind of keeping planes wrangled, and that offloads that from the organizer of the display day, because every display day has to have an official organizer. So, I mean, it's something we could do. All of us theoretically have to take aircraft ground handling, which means we know how to be around aircraft safely, and then it's just a matter of learning some of the ground handling, you know, things which I think most
That's
of us
an
know.
automatic for the Civil Air Patrol for everybody.
I'm looking it up, and I can't find anything about it. Potato.
The Riverside Display Day?
For
Yeah,
here.
I'll send you that.
Reynolds has one.
And I didn't know about it either until I became an aircraft owner, and someone said, you should go to these things. And I was like, go to what? And they're like, how do you not know this? And then you keep asking questions. Like, oh, just follow me. We'll go to Fullerton tomorrow, and you show up. Literally, it's the first time you show up, they'll hand you a sheet and say, take this sheet in your airplane, and you know, every time you show up to one of these, sign off on it. I mean, it was there was nothing that said, hey, congratulations, you're a new plane owner, and here's the display day. That's not how it happened. It was, people were like, why aren't you doing this? It's free. It's basically getting out of taxes. I was like, okay.
I think Redlands is done by the EAA.
Yeah.
So some organizations control it, and they publish it.
Mm-hmm.
Our group meets down the West End, they just park out on the ramp.
Is it the official get out of tax free version?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gotta be 30 years old, the
Yeah.
airplane, has to be 30 years old.
Which, you know, at this point, I mean, that's
Better than $2,000, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, and it's always like, because people are going, your plane looks like new, and I'm like, it's a 1965 Piper, so it definitely fits the criteria.
And the flight time is deductible.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean,
I mean, the things that I can think of, targeting the Riverside Display Day would be, I mean, yeah, should we have presence at the cafe? Of course. But I'm telling you, the weekends and especially that display day, it's super busy. So, and I mean, the only change for me is just make sure I show up in uniform.
Well, if we bring John Wayne aircraft or Fallbrook aircraft, they qualify as 30-year-old plus.
Well, where's Cat 401?
It's currently here. I'm flying it tomorrow.
Oh, you can take it back. Yeah. So I mean, there's lots of different things, and I think I made the initial mistake of thinking that we can only concentrate on this little small subsect of CAP. No, there's so many different things, and then yes, we want more people in this squadron, but I think in general, karma is what it is. If you just kind of recruit globally for either cadets or parents of cadets that are going to be helping a cadet squadron, I think it'll just get around that. It'll bring people to us by nature of people wanting to focus on not the cadet program, and they want to focus more on the emergency services program. And I think the other thing that we mentioned, and we didn't bring it up again, is ground teams have kind of gone off the wayfield. And this squadron, I don't know if we ever had a ground team, but there's a need to have adults that do ground team. And ground team is, yes, it's orienteering for the most part. There is search parameters that we do. And there's also the UDF teams that when people land a little too hard and their ELTs go off, the CAP gets a call, and we go find those in the hangar and contact the owner and get it silenced. Those are actual things that we do that are part of, the federal system. But as far as ground search, the problem is, the cadets, they don't see a lot of us adults doing ground team. So that's another thing that would be very, I think if we can get some people in the squadron that are interested in that as well, that's a whole other part of people that may be afraid of flying, which that there is such a thing, but they're afraid of flying or they don't want to fly or whatever, but they love hiking and they love kind of nature and just kind of getting out and doing things. That's been a missing part of this squadron for some time, is the ground team. So anyway, I'll sit down.
Classes
Get back
used
to
to be
it.
held quarterly in regards to ground team by somebody.
Yeah.
And you go there and get signed off on it.
well, I
And
think,
it tells you how to use the EPRS and what's required and what have you.
and I think
Very
Bert's
simple.
is going up to regional, so we're kind of losing another, big ground team guy. So it's kind of a gaping hole. If I didn't have mostly of a broken leg, I would take up, because I was originally ground team when I first joined CAP. So
I think Ken Benner is
he's ground team.
qualified for that.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, if we can get some people that also would want to, ground pound, it's another avenue of getting people interested in something that maybe they don't want to fly, but hiking around.
Now, does that start at ground team number 1, 2, or 3?
So you start at 3.
Okay.
So GT3, in fact, you just missed a class, but that is the initial phase of learning, now, and it's a pretty heavy lift, I will say that, because you're like, oh, just, take this class. Oh no, to be GT3, you need to have the equipment available to go on a hike. Like I know over in Hemet, I think they're gonna do a hike, sometime soon. But that means you gotta have your ABUs and ABUs correctly, because that's all sewn, your name tags and everything. I think it would be kind of interesting for you two, because it is a little more interactive with both aerospace and health services, because you're out exposed on hikes, and that's going to be people twisting their ankles and not being hydrated and things like that. So, but they do expect you to have the ability to hike, the correct uniform for hiking, which is ABUs, and a good pair of boots, and I can talk to some of it. I'm not GT3, but I can talk to some of it of what you need to be prepared to go out on a hike with those guys. it's, you know, it's pretty straightforward, and especially if you like going out and hiking, it's stuff you should have anyway. You just may not be used to carrying it on your back.
So where do you get those ABUs, really?
Vanguard. Did we
Really?
not talk about Vanguard?
Went-
Simply, she should have ordered these.
Yeah, but I went on Vanguard and I never remember
Mhm.
seeing specifically which ones to get.
They're just called ABUs. It's gonna be the camos, but I can help with that.
You can go to military surplus.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's it.
That's another option.
Hmm.
That's much more affordable. Plus, again, be on lookout on CEP email.
Mhm.
So often we get an announcement that this Air Force base gets rid of a bunch of ABUs,
And I
all
think
kinds
we
of
have some
sizes.
in the. I think we have some in the office
I
too.
saw it, but for me it would be like. way
Yeah,
too
it's a
long.
little bit too big, but there it looks like there is a fly suit for you.
But it's way too long. It's like literally I have to like.
you can shorten it.
Roll it up. But yeah, I mean, yeah. So I mean, but as far as what, have you guys seen 39-1? It's the uniform code.
Yes.
It will literally tell you here are the pieces you should have. So it's a brown T-shirt. It's not black and it's not white. It's a brown T-shirt. And, you know, they have all those rules in there. Most of the ground team senior members, since they are interacting with cadets, it's going to be a little more uniformy. Like you know, we're pretty laid back in the squadron. You know, wear your clothes, have a good day. But on ground team, they really want you to be an example for the cadets, so they want their uniform worn correctly. Now, if you don't want to wear ABUs, because when I start doing it, I will probably wear the blueberry, as we call it, which is blues. Like it's they're camos. They're not camos, but they're the same style of clothing. They're just blue because of that. But same reason I wear a blue flight suit. It's the same reason I wear the blue flight suit.
So those ones, because I was thinking maybe Jessica would want that one because she's more flights than I am.
If she's gonna show up and fly, sure. But
She
that's
hasn't completed her onboarding.
yeah.
But yeah, that one, since you said it has to be like specialized, how would one?
Customized.
Yes, thank you. That's the word. I'm looking
Which
for.
one? What's this now?
The ABU in the back.
I don't-
Does that require customization?
I mean, the only.
Probably order the name tapes.
Oh, right.
You
And
need
the
name
rank, I
tapes,
don't know if
you
the rank
need
is sewn
your
on the arm.
professional track, like you are medical, so you do have to display that. You have to be, you are first lieutenant, so you have to have your palettes sewn on the
Or your bars will be.
Well,
like,
well,
or bars, whatever.
for officers, it's on the collars.
we're still that way. We're not doing them in the
Well, if
center.
you're doing the ABUs, that's how it is in the Air Force.
Oh, they're not the center anymore.
Well, that's the new uniform.
I can't keep track.
The ACU, yeah.
We're
those ones
able to
were-
buy uniforms at the exchange.
The new uniforms,
Yes.
yes, but they haven't converted those yet.
You can buy uniform at March Exchange. You have to show them COP ID to do that. They did get confused when I showed up, and they called the manager to get approval that I can indeed buy something
What's
from.
this guy doing in here? He's got a Russian accent. Oh no!
Right, so maybe they don't have ABUs because Air Force switched to a new
Yeah.
uniform style.
If they switch, have they switched yet?
Um,
I mean, we're like, yeah. I mean, we're always.
CAP is still the old uniform from the.
We're using ABUs, but probably not the new ones. But when you wear like the parka and stuff, that all has rank in the center.
Yes.
So we're a mishmash of what the current uniform codes are. But 39-1 is where you go if you're like, especially like looking at putting together the blues, for example. That's your best way, and it's a little convoluted. I can help with some of it, but you know, if you're looking at how to build those particular uniforms, that's your guide.
You know, this is actually something I just came as you're talking about. This is one of the things that I noticed when I was looking for the uniform information back in last fall was a few CAP Squadron sites have it all broken down. They have a visual guide, like this is the uniform, and here it is. Just like we have the paper right there that lists the stuff for 511, 511.
Maybe that.
But that's just a thought. Maybe I'll email this to Brenner afterwards. He's asking for ideas for the Group 3.
That's a great idea.
Because
That's
that's-
how I did my uniform, my blues. I was confused with
Good.
29-1.
Because for us new people,
I
it's like,
simply went online and I searched what senior should look like.
Because that's exactly because there's a lot of
I'm
there's a
not
ton of
military, so-
there's a ton of stuff out there for cadets. Like
Yeah.
like what cadets need to look like, but
but not to break it down for seniors.
yeah,
It's
not bringing it down for
hard.
seniors, and so and again.
And very confusing as well for new people, sorry.
Well, and especially, yeah, I mean, you're actually right, because, you know, I mean, and I think I make this, because, I mean, you're military, I went to the Air Force Academy, so uniforms was very, very specific, right? And so to me, I'm so geeky that I just read 39-1, and it's like, oh, okay, well.
I
fine,
read it. I just couldn't understand it.
Right, but it even affects me, because I remember I was doing, so I have both green flight suit for when I lose weight, and then I have blue flight suit for being fat. I was having my wife kind of sew, the stuff on, and I gave her explicit instructions and whatnot, and then of course she didn't do it right. So, and I'm such a stickler about it that it's like, well, okay, we have to redo this, and so I mean, I'm a little bit weirder in that perspective, but you're probably right. Like, we should probably go through, because and you will see a lot of, you're gonna go to a SRX and make sure your uniform is good. And I've seen people show up at SRX with incorrect uniforms, and it's not like they get sent home, but they're like, hey, when you come back tomorrow, you should have like correct boots, or correct. I mean, and I've seen it, and I was like, well, okay, but we are. The deal is there's cadets, and that's, I think, one of the big things is we need to look uniform as an organization. We're often, whether you think so or not, just because you're new, the cadets will still look at you as a senior member. And so if you're going to wear the uniform, it needs to be correct. So if you're going to wear blues, especially, because the cadets will be wearing typically blues and ABUs, it needs to be correct. And that's the reason we stress that. If you're wearing the corporate polos, well, the corporate polo is pretty straightforward, and the fact that, yes, there's different standards on pants and all that kind of stuff. And there's actually 3 different types of polos, so not a lot of people know that either. So yeah, there's this polo which we recommend because they breathe better and they look nicer, but there's other versions of the same polo, they're just not the tactical version. And so, again, that's what we're going to help with. But I guess we could set squadron standards, I guess, is what we could do, is say this tactical polo is the one that we prefer, and here's the pants, and if you're going to wear a flight suit, check with us because we might have one, but if you're going to order one, shell out a ton of cash and get.
Because one of the things that I was noticing when I was reading 39-1 was it would say things like wearing the Air Force style. I'm like, well, I don't know what the Air Force style uniform is. So how am I? It's like I don't know what this is referring.
Is blues, right, or ABUs. So when they say Air Force style, and they're referring to height, weight standards, and hair and all that stuff, or green flight suits, right? Green flight suits, blues of any type, and the ABUs. Corporate is blue flight suit, corporate polos, or the white aviator shirt and gray pants. And it's like I guess
Yeah, it's
yeah,
like,
we
I've
don't
got it
think
all
about
figured
it.
down. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
over the 6 months or whatever it's been. Yeah, it's but that's just one of the things. So I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna see if I can remind myself to email like, hey, that would be a good idea. Just have some pictures of like this is
Yeah.
what we know, the types of uniforms that are recommended for
I
different.
guess I could put a girdle on and put my old blues on, so it's like, okay, here's what blues should look like. I actually still have my blues from
Because
20
like
years ago.
if I shaved, I could wear any uniform I wanted to, but I just don't want to shave.
So the camel ones are only for adults then? I mean, for cadets? That's what it looks like?
The camo is for
No, it's ground team particularly,
Oh.
or encampment. 'cause we
or
don't-
encampment,
yeah, you go
or
to
if there is any kind of event which has a uniform set for
Mm.
specific event.
Like
For example,
yeah.
like
March
March Air
Air,
Force
yeah.
Base, all seniors must either have ABUs or a flight suit if they are by the aircraft. That's an example.
Oh, really?
No, I'm just saying.
I think they would have us our corporate, but
Yeah,
they will,
the
but they will
corporate
tell
is
you.
okay. They will tell you if there is a uniform of the day or required uniform
form for specific events.
Because I think that's one of the other things too when it comes to like, so just to participate. Cause so I was out last Thursday. There was an aerospace education meeting for I think it was all of California, and so I was listening in on that, and they were focusing a lot on the air show stuff, and so that's but one of the questions I guess that's coming up in there is, an air show is a long event, and especially at March. I mean, it's earlier in the year this year, so it might not be that hot, but sometimes it's 100 degrees up there. We've almost fainted the last time we went to the March Air Show, and we just got there at like noon and sat in a lawn chair.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question is, that was not a fun experience whatsoever, and I can't imagine having to sit there wearing a flight suit or or a black shirt.
Yeah.
Um,
So you'll have, so first of all, there will typically for these things, you'll have a safety officer and hopefully a health services officer. And that's one of the things that it should be monitored, right, is hydration, resting, shade, especially with weather permissions. And Bob can speak to safety, but I've been around enough events now that there will be a safety officer, and that's one of the things they're supposed to be monitoring. Now, as far as a black polo in the middle of the day, you're right, it's gonna get rough. A lot of times the cadets, they will be wearing ABUs and they'll be authorized to just they'll take their BDU blouse off, right, and just have the t-shirt. And then they may still have their, their vest, their high-vis vest. So it all depends on the situation. That's supposed to be a dynamic thing that the person in charge, the incident commander and the safety officer are supposed to kind of.
but are
work
those for the air shows? Is it a you need to be there at dark 30 and leave when the show's over, or can you work
Depends on your detail.
a show?
So like when you show, in fact, you say, look, I can give 2 hours, and if that's acceptable to, the people that are, running it, they'll be like, yeah, we need you here at this time,
A
through this
breaker,
time,
basically.
and,
Just somebody to break everybody else for 2 hours.
right,
Okay.
so.
That's one of the
Yeah.
questions. It's like I can't I can't commit to
Yeah.
an 8-hour event on my only day off of the week.
We're a volunteer organization, right? So it's just, when you're signing up for these events, make it very clear, here's what I can do, here's what I can't do, here's what I'm comfortable doing, here's what I'm not comfortable doing. No one's gonna force you, no one should make you feel bad about, you can only give 2 hours, well, we need you, no. So, I'll give you an example, and they were looking for that crew for the Coast Guard mission. And I was like, yeah, I want to go do that because I'm wire survival trained. And he's like, yeah, you got to be at Fallbrook at 5:45 in the morning. And I was like, yeah, okay, so no, because I was like, okay, that's getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning for me. And I was like, I'm not going to be useful to you on the mission if I'm doing that. So, and I don't feel bad. It's just next time I agree to that, I know what I'm in for and what I'm agreeing to do.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I guess what I'm asking is like, how flexible? The question. I think you've answered it already, but I guess that's kind of what my question was, like, how flexible is some of this stuff? Because it always seems like with the notes, the information that comes out there seems like it's going to be, here's your full-time job commitment for your day off. And it's like sometimes that's possible. Like sometimes we can pull something like that off because it's again, sitting out in the cafe, like I could sit there for 6 hours, but
it's a matter of just ask questions, right? So SARXs can be like that. SARXs can be very lengthy. You show up early, and there's a lot of stand around, hurry up and wait, and then you'll get in the plane. You're supposed to get 2 or 3 sorties in today, but you got 1 sortie in, and you're kind of bummed out. Now you got to either come back tomorrow and do the same thing, or you have to do another SARX. It's going to be that way because we're not the Air Force. We're not scheduled in that way. So the best thing to do is when you see those things come up in the email, ask questions. Like the person who's sending it out, just go, hey, I'm interested, but here's how much time I can get.
And that's another thing that you brought up that can be a bit disconcerting because these emails come out, you read them, and they say, this is the email to ask questions. You take your time to send an email in,
Just don't reply at all.
and you never get a response.
Just don't
That's
reply at all.
another thing. That's
Well,
I'm thinking, they put all this effort into sending this email information, and they don't even have the time to respond when
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah,
That's-
it is
yeah.
very off-putting, and I'll say I've been subject to it because I want to get into the onboarding program, looking for a flight instructor that has time, and it's a very off-putting process of getting matched up with somebody to do it, and you pretty much have to be aggressive about it. Like and I haven't been, it's like you have to hunt people down and call them. You look in our little app that's not an app, the BRMA, and you hunt them down and you text them and you call them and you email them, and like I said, I've been through at least 5 people that some contact you, some don't, some say I don't have time, and it is an off-putting process. Because we're a volunteer organization, don't let that discourage you. It's just it's their second or third or fourth job, and just try to stick with it, especially with something that if you are very interested in doing it, be persistent. Just and call them
Text them.
specifically, yeah. Use
Specifically
PRMA.
on instructors and
Yeah.
SETs, SATs.
Mhm.
They are very busy. You compete against other members asking for their time. If you don't be, very aggressive about it, you're not gonna get anything. It took me third or fourth attempt to get my first introductory flight for onboarding program. I started calling all the CAP instructors one by one until one responded. And that was Trent Ferris. Trent Ferris, unfortunately, now is unavailable, but he was great. Shane, he's great, but he's Delta pilot. Sometimes he's not available.
I mean, I tried like Scott Deneen. He was taking Multi right next door, and he still didn't have time to train me. So it's
Right,
This
so
is-
I
this is what
went
it is.
as far as Santa Monica to get my Form 5 done. So if you want to get something done, you're going to get something done, but push it. You need it, only you need it. Get it done if you're interested enough. So, I think we talked, we got a good coverage. We talked about membership, we talked about how to recruit people. And we did cover a number of topics related to emergency services. I would like to mention once again just federal assessment of damages is an interesting program. Look it up. If you need help finding it, I will help you. Just ask. I will email you the resources I went through. It's a great program. Unfortunately, I didn't finish it. It requires a lot of time. You really have to, up until I got to the practical part, I was okay. But then I was tasked to assess number of damaged properties as a result of floods and whatnot, and it was like so much detail, I kind of stalled. But that's
I
me.
check that out. Actually, I worked at a place that pioneered that back during Katrina.
Yeah.
Like doing satellite-based damage assessments. Yeah, I gotta check that
They
out.
just had an event this past weekend. It came from NHQ, not from the wing.
Mm.
And
Oh, the ones in Mississippi, or
yeah,
where
it's
that was?
Arkansas. All right, Mario, Roger, thank you for joining. Hope to see you next meeting.
It's safety.
Right.
If he's not working nights. If not, I got something.
Thank you all.
Good night. Till next time, be safe.
Night.
Gone.